Hey y'all, welcome to Facing the 50s. My name's Deanne. Here on this channel, we talk about makeup and skincare for the mature woman. Today's topic, tips for hooded, mature, textured eyes. So as I've transitioned into my 50s, I've noticed that gravity is starting to take its toll and some things are starting to sag a little bit more than they did in the past. One area is my eyes. So I've noticed that this outside part, this hood, has started to sag just a little bit more. So what I've done is I've pulled together, I guess, some of my best tips and tricks that I do pretty much daily to help give me a more lifted look with my eyes. And hopefully they'll help some of you out there. Now I'm going to do this in sort of a do's versus don'ts explanation. So one side of my face will be do and one side will be don't. Now, let me just throw this out there. If I say something's a don't and you do it and you love it, then you keep on doing it. Makeup is definitely individual. I'm just sharing things that I feel like help me feel like my eyes are more lifted. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So my first tip is eyeshadow primer. Now, I used to think that eyeshadow primer was just a whole bunch of hooey and you didn't really need it until I started testing it and going without it. Well, I need it. So I make sure every single day that I start out with a thin layer of eyeshadow primer. It helps the eyeshadow go on better, and it definitely helps it stay better for me because my eyelids get oily throughout the day. What I will also do, so I will go in with some eyeshadow primer, and then I will take just a transparent powder there, and I will set it. All right, that looks a little white, but it's one of those really finely milled transparent powders, and it just sets it for me. So this will be my good eye or my do eye, and this will be my don't eye. So on my don't, I'm not going to use any. And by the end of the day, my eyeshadow would be completely gone. So I always make sure I use primer and I set it with a powder. All right, so I got my eyeshadow primer on. Now to my next tip, and my next tip has to do with your brows. So first thing I do is I grab my brow brush and I do go ahead and brush it up. Now I'm going to start with my don't side. So here's what I don't recommend that you do. What I don't recommend, one, is that you don't fill them in because they frame the face, so we definitely want you to fill them in. But the real tip that I have has to do with how you fill them in. So I'm just using a brow powder here just to kind of fill in and give a little structure. Now, what I want you to be careful of out here on the outside, see how my brow kind of curves? What I want to be real careful of is following to the letter, that curve, or following that curve exactly, because if I do, you get a little bit more to make sure that you can see it. If I follow that, oh my goodness, when I look back up in the camera, it's creepy. So when I follow that curve exactly, can you see how like downward that points? And that just makes this right here pop out even bigger, and you don't want that part of your eye bigger, and it makes my eye droop. So I definitely don't want to follow that tail down. What I want to do is come over here to the do side. Go ahead and sculpt that brow a little bit. But when I get to the tail here, I want to go out with it. So out instead of down. All right, so can you see the difference between how this one here, my eye looks droopier. This part of the hooded part right here looks bigger and more pronounced, and we haven't even put anything on it yet. This eye over here looks a little more elongated. I've got more room to work when I get ready to put on eyeshadows. So the tip with brows is, be careful. Don't follow it all the way down like that. Make sure you just extend it out to get your eye, to make it look a little more elongated. All right, so the next tip has to do with highlighting your brow bone. So I'm talking about this area right here underneath where the arch of your eyebrow is. Now it's the highest part of your eyebrow, so it's where you're going to get the most lift. And here's the reason why I want you to be careful when you're working there. So what I will see a lot of times is people will use a really light kind of shimmery, frosty color almost. Can you see that color there? And they'll go all the way across that entire hood. Now, it highlights it, but for me, it highlights it kind of negatively because what I can see, and I don't know if you can see in the camera, but when I look in the mirror here, I can see every little piece of texture that I've got, every line, every wrinkle, every, you know, kind of my eyes are a little crepey a little bit. So all of that shows up and it's more pronounced. So that's not a good look for me. What I would rather you do, I'm going to use that same brush, but I'm going to flip it over to this really small side. And I'm just going to dip it into kind of a color that's just a little bit lighter than my skin tone. And I'm going to go up here right under the arch of my eye. If you have trouble finding where, or the arch of my eyebrow, if you have trouble finding it, you can use your brushes like this and it'll show you where that arch should be. So if you put it where your nose is and have it kind of run right through your pupil, then right there is where the arch should be. So I'm going to take and just put the tiniest little bit of this color right up under there. And this is a matte color, so that's the tip here is to use matte, not shimmer. And so you can see I still get the benefit of having a little bit of lift, but I don't have all of these texture issues that I did when I used the shimmer shade over there and I used too much of it. So there's your tip there with brows. Now, the next tip has to do with brushes, and I've sort of alluded to it a little bit already. With brushes, I want you to try to find smaller brushes because typically if you have hooded eyes, they're probably on the smaller side anyway. And this one took me a while to figure out because I tried for several years of doing my eyeshadow and thinking, why is mine not turning out, like it should? And I was buying all the, the MAC brushes and all the other brushes. And finally, I realized that they were just too big for me. So I don't have any big ones left. I wish I did to actually compare it for you. But the ones that you're going to see me use are typically smaller. Like this one here can fit right inside of that crease area and right on top of it. You'll know, if you've watched any of my videos, you know this one's going to be coming up here shortly. But I would definitely try to find some smaller brushes because you just don't have as much area to work with as a lot of people do. So smaller brushes. Let's get into our crease. We always hear we got to define our crease, all right? I've heard it a million times. Well, our crease is already defined. You can definitely see where our crease is. What we want to do is lift our crease. And so here's how we're going to do that. Now, on the don't side, what I will see done is people will take like a mid-tone brown shade or whatever works for them, and they put it right here, like in the actual crease, okay? Like right where that skin folds. And then when I open my eye, there's nothing. You can't really tell that there's a crease, and it certainly didn't help lift the eye. What I would recommend that you do is take that same color and go slightly above where that folds. And I like to do little circles. Some people do windshield wiper, whatever works best for you. But when I do little circles, it just kind of blends it as I go. And I get that darker color, that mid-tone color. I bring it out to right about there. And that's another tip that we'll get into, is not going too far down with any of your eyeshadow. But I will use that as my guide right there. And so now you can see I've sort of created the illusion of a little bit of darkness, a little bit higher on my eye. So it makes that eye look a little bit bigger versus this one, which it didn't really do anything with. So the tip there is to go slightly above the actual natural crease when you're putting on your crease color, okay? All right, now the next thing has to do with creases as well. The color that you saw me put on here is a mid-tone matte brown. What I recommend is certainly a matte because we're trying to mimic a shadow, and shadows don't shine. So I don't want to use a shimmer shade in my crease. Now, please don't think that I'm all against shimmer because I told you not to use it on your brow bone, and now I'm going to tell you not to use it in your crease. There is a place that we can use shimmer, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But if we were to, let me just grab a little shimmery brown that's about the same color as the one that I used on the other side. If I do that, and let's say that I do go up a little bit above where I need to go, and I put that brown shimmery color as my crease. Again, I hope it's picking up, but I have even more texture in my crease than I did on the top of my eye, and it's just, you know, exaggerating it even more. So again, not a good look. So in your crease or right above your crease, continue to use a matte mid-tone color. My next tip has to do with this outer V that we're always hearing about. Now, what I want you to be careful of when you come in to do an outer V, and we do this to kind of give our eye definition, to elongate it. Doing an outer V is great, but let's make sure that we get it placed correctly. So on the don't side, I will come in and tap in my darker color, and I'm going to let it slightly go down just a little bit too far, okay? So you can see how it's just a little too far here, because if I were to put my brush this way, if you could see under my brush, it's just down a little bit far and it's dragging my eye down. What I would rather, same color, is following that angle and go up with it, okay? Just go slightly up till I meet where I defined my crease. And then I'm actually going to flip it and blend with that side. This helps keep, in case you've got too much on your pencil brush where you're putting in your outer V color, this helps keep it from getting really, really dark really fast when you use that other side to kind of blend with. So can you see the difference there? This eye, droopy, down too far, and this eye is starting to even be more lifted with that gradient color coming out. So your outer V, you want to lift it up. All right, the next tip has to do with your all over lid color. So there's a couple of things at play here. With your all over lid color, one thing I would recommend, let me find a clean brush here. One thing I would recommend is not using a dark color. All right, so I'm going to pull a color that is just about actually the same color as my shirt. It's a beautiful color, but it's not an all over lid color for me. So if I go in and put this all over my eye, what it's going to do is really start to close my eye off and make it look smaller. And that's, again, not what we're trying to accomplish. So what I would rather see you do is I'm going to go in with, so that color that I used up here on my brow bone, I'm going to use it to kind of give me a good little bright base right there. And then I'm going to use kind of a different mid-tone color right in here, because what I want to do, I'm going to create a gradient from light to medium to deep on the outside, and I've already got the light now in the deep, and I want something just right there in the middle to kind of give me a little color. All right, so you can see the difference there. So using sort of a gradient effect versus a dark all over color. Now I will say that there may be a time and place that you want to do sort of a smoky look that would call for a dark all over color. But for the most part, know that it will make your eyes look a little bit smaller. You can tweak some other parts of your makeup to make it work for sure, but it just makes your eyes look a little smaller. All right, so we've got that with the all over color. Now, next we get into eyeliner. Here, let me clean this up a little bit because I don't want that to be... I'm trying to keep it as realistic as possible, and I know that if I were doing my eyeshadow, I would clean that up just a little bit anyway. All right, so you can still see it's out too far. All right, next, eyeliner. The don't would be, I don't use pencil crayon eyeliners anymore because they just take up too much of my eyelid. So here, let me put some on and show you what I mean. I'm just using this one across the top. And what it does, even, as thinly as I can sharpen them, even what it does is it takes up so much room there that by the time I open my eye, you can't see much of my lid at all. All right. What I would recommend instead, my favorite brush that I showed you a little bit earlier, just dipped into a little black eyeshadow. And what I do with it is called tightlining my eyes. So I will take and push this just right into my lashes. So I'm not even going above the lash line, I'm going right in between my lashes. this will make your eyelashes look thicker and fuller and give you that illusion of having eyeliner on, but not take up any of that precious real estate that you want to save for color. So that's why I love this tiny brush. Now, there was another one, this other one that I had here, this end where we did the eyebrow highlight. You could use that end as well, but you just know this is my favorite. I like this one a little better because it's flat. So anyway, that's probably one of the best tips I have overall for hooded eyes is tightlining. Okay, let me clean a little of that up. All right, so tightline in your eyes. All right, one more thing with liner, and I went ahead and tried to draw this on here just a little bit to show you. I know a lot of times we see all of these, folks with these big winged eyeliners. And what I've just had to come to realize is with my hooded eyes, it just doesn't work. If you can get it to work with yours and you like that look, then absolutely do it. But I've just stopped even trying because it just kind of looks like a little mess here. And when I open my eyes, it doesn't give me that same effect because this part of my eye, this hood, comes down too far and I don't get that really cool straight line. So anyway, just know that it's okay not to have wing liner. You can certainly kind of get the effect, that lift, by doing your shadows this way, like I showed you on the good eye. All right, what do we have left? Just a couple of more tips here. Oh, on the lower lash line. So for me, I have never been one that really did any liner on the lower lash line because my eyes have always been small. So the don't for me would be lining this waterline. I will see it done like all the way in. And on somebody with big, beautiful almond-shaped eyes or whatever, it can be gorgeous. But if you're like me and you have small eyes, it just shuts them down, makes them super small. So I won't do that. And the other thing that I don't do is, so I'll take this little pencil brush and I'll see a lot of people, let me find the right color here, one that would be usable. All right, so here. So let's say that I want to connect to this outer V color that I used. And a lot of folks will go in and define underneath their eye with an eyeshadow. But again, it just doesn't do much for me. It makes my eye look super closed. So not my thing. What I will do instead is every now and then, like if I really, really want to color into there, I will find kind of a brighter color. And this is where I might use a shimmer. So I might find a brighter color and put it under there. And I don't put much, but I put just enough that, when it catches the light, it shines a little bit and kind of matches my eyes. And it gives just a little more interest to that lower lash line. But for the most part, I don't put anything underneath there. All right, so next to last thing here, curl my lashes. I have always been a lash curler. I will always be a lash curler. It just makes such a big difference for me. Now with lashes, with lash curlers, you want to get as close as you can to your eye without, hurting it, and squeeze there for a good little amount of time. If you can hold it a full 30 seconds, that's fantastic. And then I will release and move it slightly out and do that same thing again. You can pump a couple of times if you want to. And then I'll release, pull it slightly out, and do that again. That way I'm getting a curl several places in that lash, and it will help it stay longer and help it be a little more curled. So with that, I will pop on a little mascara, which I also think is a must. And I will do a little mascara on that lower line just to balance it out. All right, so there you go. Now, the very last tip that I have is, and you've seen me have to kind of work around it a couple of times already, the very last tip I have is do your foundation last. Because, look, if I had done it first, I've already wiped this off once, and if I had done it first, all of this right here would have messed up my foundation, right? I even got a little bit over here on the good side. But if you haven't done your foundation, then a quick little wipe or a little Q-tip and you can get that cleaned up. So that's it. Those are my tips. Nothing rocket science. You've probably heard most of them before, but just remembering them, or maybe I showed you something in a little different light than what you'd seen it before. I'd be curious if you have any tips that I didn't share them below, because maybe there's something that I'm not doing that I could be doing that would help with my eyes. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe. I'd love to have you, in the channel, and I will catch you in the next video.